healing. Well, first I'm going to open in prayer. Father, I just praise you, thank you that you're here with us all. I just ask for your guidance and your presence to be here in me, that all the words that I speak are guided by you, and that you touch who you will tonight. Thank you. So, hello. My name is December. I love Jesus, and I'm a grateful follower of his. He's setting me free of wrong-centered eating, codependency, and many other things. First things first, yes, I was born in December. Just get that out of the way right. So, how did I come to a point where I have a testimony to give here at Rancho Celebrate Recovery? The truth of it is, I started in 2009 and I'm still finding out. I'll share what I have to date because I've had some amazing victory, but I know there's more to come. Maybe some of what I share is for someone here tonight. So the basics. I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska to working class parents in a mix of German, Native American, Czechoslovakian, Christian, Midwestern influences and values, whatever that is. I have one younger brother, Myron, by 11 months, and when we were little, I always took great pleasure in reminding him that I was the oldest. Now he takes great pleasure in reminding me that I'm the oldest. But we have a lot of fun together. I always felt as though I had a pretty happy childhood for the most part, and I grew up to be someone who enjoys life and people. I've never had struggles with things people think most about as addictions, like alcohol, drugs, and gambling. However, I found out addictions come in many different packages, and that I have many. I came to know Jesus at the age of around 2 through my grandma, Ninabelle, my dad's mom. She and my grandpa took care of my brother and I while my parents worked. She introduced us to Jesus and had a fire and passion for establishing a relationship with him in our hearts. I lost my place. Sorry about that. When my parents moved us to California, I was just 5. I became a typical Southern California kid, playing with friends on my street. I had learned ballet and tap, as well as piano. I started singing in choir and played drums in school. I was a Girl Scout and loved camping and hiking. I volunteered at my local hospital in high school. Though my grandma had introduced me to Jesus, my parents never found a church that they liked when we moved here. So I didn't attend church again until I was in the 6th grade, when I met my friend Lisa, and her mom took me to church with them. I loved attending church and learning about Jesus. My parents were okay with me going, so I went through confirmation, was baptized at 16, and became a member of the church. Sounds kind of like Little Goody Two-Shoes meets Florence Nightingale to this point, right? Yep, that was pretty much me. Oh, I had life struggles, not the kind some have, but struggles nonetheless. I had terrible ear infections from birth through my teens. I had fears about bullies and being accepted in school, body and self-image issues. I let my fear of rejection as a teen give an adult man at my high school an opportunity to touch me inappropriately. And my father's choices in leaving my mother hurt me and my family very deeply, although I've very much forgiven him and love him dearly. All those things were painful and difficult. But happy me continued on, still an optimistic person. I began a career working fresh out of high school at State Farm while attending college at night. I also met my wonderful hubby-to-be fresh out of high school, Robert Long. We celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary this year in June. We married 2 years after we met, and we had our first child, Brandon, when I was 21, and our first daughter, Crystal, when I was 22. I started working in statistical tracking and documentation for pharmaceutical clinical trials, and then worked several years as a legal secretary. We lost our second daughter, Sarah, 6 months into our pregnancy with him, her when I was 30, and that was a very devastating thing for my husband and I. I began work in property management and had my youngest daughter, Taylor, when I was 31. I enjoyed our family life together with our kids in sports and scouts and church. It was a busy time in our lives. As my children came into their late teens and began more activities on their own, I spent more time learning about and becoming active in prayer through several people, including my mentor and longtime friend, Pastor Joe Johnson from Huntington Beach. I trained and ministered in prayer in many churches. One type of prayer I was exposed to and still minister and pray with prayer partners in allowed Jesus to begin to show me the truth about many of the lies I had believed and lived from all through my life. Around this time, the time of my youngest daughter's birth, I also began the adventure of working where I do to this day for 18 years in marketing and sales for a manufacturer of biologicals used in human blood diagnostics. The short version is I work on a little goat farm and find customers and help them with our products. When I'm not doing that, I'm doing a variety of things that support the marketing of our product worldwide. All right, so now you know somewhat a condensed life story about me in a nutshell, right? Wrong. Wrong. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. And from Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. A big part of my story started in 2008. Enter Karen Paul, who attends Rancho Community, and for some years has been a wonderful friend through prayer-related things. She up and asked me out of the blue, in the fall of 2008, would you be my co-leader for the Women's Codependent Group? Rancho is starting a Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery? Codependent? What's that? I have no idea what these things mean. We talk, and she explains a little bit about what codependent is and a little about Celebrate Recovery, a Christ-centered 12-step program. 12-step. Ding, ding. I think AA, and my brain registers a little. I had friends and relatives who attended that, so I sort of have an idea. But codependent? Nope, not ringing any bells. Karen tells me to see Pastor Rich if I'm interested. He's heading this up, and I tell her I'll pray about it, and if I get a prompting that I'm supposed to do it, I'll meet with Pastor Rich. So I prayed, and I did get a prompting that I should do this. And at this point, I know I have many issues. I'm regularly getting prayer and working through lies I've believed with my prayer partners, as well as ministering prayer with others. But I did not relate any of my issues to codependency. It's pretty funny looking back on it. I really didn't see how I would be any use in CR at all, but I felt I was supposed to be involved. I didn't believe I could really relate. Can you say denial? The materials Karen showed me for CR made it clear that people leading these groups were ones who had successfully worked in the CR process in order to be able to encourage, guide, and help relate to the people attending. And I had no framework of experience with codependent issues that I was aware of. And I had never worked through a 12-step. So I met with Pastor Rich, and I told him I didn't know why I should be a co-leader at all, but that I had prayed about it and felt a prompting from the Lord to do it. And if he wanted me to, I'd be a co-leader with Karen. Why he said okay, I don't know. I think that was God. Because I certainly did not see that I was a fit, to me anyway. So I went to training in 2008, and the first meeting of CR at Rancho began in 2009. The first year, going through the steps, I began to see one thing, on the codependent flyer that sort of resonated for me. I even admitted that I was probably in denial, but didn't really seem to know what it was. Laura Davison, who was my co-leader for some time, can testify. I went from saying I'm December, and I struggle with many issues, to I struggle with one codependent issue, to I'm December and thankful to be recovering from codependency. I didn't really know it at the time, but my starting CR was the beginning of some deeply difficult challenges in my life, as well as the best freedom I have ever known. God saw some things that he wanted me free of that I had no idea about. So along with plopping me into CR by my little codependent helping hands, he placed a coworker in my life whose behavior really stirred me up. Things began really escalating with this coworker about the same time as our first CR Women's Step Study began in 2010. I began to work the steps with God in our group, and that is the place where I came face to face with the things that are very devastating and disappointing about me. That year, I had a physical breakdown with my shoulder and wrists at work from overworking at my computer. I did not have good boundaries with my management, and the pressure with my coworker just added to the toxic and painful mix that was my life at work. Thankfully, over time, with the help of Jesus through CR and my prayer partners, I burned my Wonder Woman outfit and got on God's page about boundaries and attitudes. I kept handing my coworker over to Jesus and praying about loving him. From 1 John 4:20, if someone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For the one who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. I learned that I had spent many years denying that I was judgmental about others while doing the same things they did in different wrapping paper. I somehow thought I was more capable or had it together because I was more functional in some ways and had a lot of pride about that. I learned that I hate that others can't do right, but when I can't do right, I give me a pass. I learned that I become someone else who is not me, solely to avoid rejection. I avoid appearing broken or less than so that I can feel better and less vulnerable. I have the being right is more important illness. I rescue people in situations because I believe I must, but I found out it's not been a good thing for me or them. And it has enabled others to never stretch or grow in dealing with their own challenges with God as their guide. Basically, I learned that I'm a horrible mess and have terrible Pharisee, codependent, know-it-all, perfectionist tendencies. And I try to masquerade as a sweet, wonderful, lovable person. Wow. That is one massive series of ugly, and horrifying discoveries. And I discovered that in order to be free of it, I had to admit it to me and others publicly, out loud. Oh no, my biggest fear. Someone else would know terrible things about me and reject me. That was tough. But the ladies in the Women's Step Study and Codependent Group and my dear CR friends and leaders have been so good at supporting, not fixing, and loving and not judging, not rejecting. It was very scary and very painful, but it was also the best thing in my life. Every time I lean into really painful, humiliating stuff, admit it, and remain transparent, it turns out that God frees me of more and more junk. It's not about avoiding and hiding problems, but living open and wholehearted through them with others. From James 5:16, therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. So fast forward to April of 2012. I have struggled with weight all of my life. Food has been a long-time confidant, comforter, consoler, entertainer, distressor, and just all-around go-to fix for many things for me. Of course, food doesn't really fix anything except a hungry belly, but I certainly have treated it as a cure-all at times. I've played the lose weight equals good girl and gain weight equals bad girl gain. I've exercised incessantly in order to be able to eat what I want to or to lose weight only. I've let the mirror tell me who I am and how to feel about myself. I've gone without eating in a public place, only to overeat things in private that had no value, just to feel good and feel full. This year, God got my attention about how I see and interact with food. Food, unlike some addictions, is not something people can stay away from or completely give up for life. It is a very challenging thing to learn how to eat and view food in ways very different than I ever have before. I used it to numb, distract, and comfort, not optimally to fuel my body or provide it nutrients. I knew that to have success at all in finding out what was behind my behavior with food was going to take walking closely with God through the steps and alongside my sisters in CR. Rich was very supportive about starting a women's eating disorder and food addiction group. He even knew someone else who wanted to start this group as well, Jane Dawson. God certainly brought her at the right time for this group. I admire her greatly and her willingness to be vulnerable and honest in her own struggles. So she is always encouraging and supporting to all of us. Since April, when we started this group, I've found some interesting things out about me and why I treat food the way I do. I discovered that I've used weight as a protector and covering on my armor of defense. I developed at a very young age and always had the type of attention that I didn't want from many boys growing up. You may be able to imagine what that would be like. I wanted to be liked, but it was an ugly feeling to be liked only for your body. It made me feel like a thing and not a real person with feelings. To have no value placed on your ideas, your thoughts, and the things you liked. It made me feel very self-conscious to deal with remarks and stares, and it led me to be extremely sarcastic and cutting as a defense. One male high school teacher never actually looked me in the eyes the whole school year. It gave me a slimy and embarrassed feeling to be in his class every day. I didn't dress provocatively, but he made me feel embarrassed, even in a full covering jacket, to be around him. Later, after I was married and had my first child, I found that keeping weight on gave me some relief from this annoying attention. My husband has always been loving and supportive to me, regardless of my weight. I'm so thankful for him. I know that my weight gain had been especially hard on him at times, but he has proven over and over again that he loves me for myself and not only for my looks. When I began to lose weight, even remarks from good friends who I know love me for me started to cause me a lot of anxiety and started old feelings of self-consciousness and embarrassment. I made the connection about why I used to sabotage my weight loss when it would become very noticeable. I was losing my protective covering and felt very vulnerable and exposed. It's been good to recognize this and walk through the vulnerable feelings with God. Another thing I've noticed is that I am really good at story writing. Are any of you good story writers? I'm so good at interpreting my circumstances and other people's intentions in a way that leads me to stress and feel anxious or angry. Somehow I think I know so well how things will go or what someone else intended. It leads me to eat in order to distress. What I've been learning is that I don't have to write the story. I get to live a better story with Christ. Instead of seeing the worst and imagining terrible things, I get to remember what Jesus promised me and live from that truth. And it's such a help to be able to talk about these things with a group of women who understand and don't judge. The shame attached to these feelings about my body and wrong behaviors has been dissolving in this process. I am so thankful for CR and how God uses it to reveal and clear away the stuff hidden deep inside me. I'm looking forward to more freedom. There's always more freedom in growing. Growing in authenticity and wholehearted living. From Ephesians 1:18 and 19, I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, so that you may know what is the hope of his calling, what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints, and what is the surpassing greatness of his power toward us who believe. These are in accordance with the working of the strength of his might. So, I never really thought CR was for me. I thought it was helping. I know different now. Believe me, I'm very thankful. I believe some of the hardest people to reach with a true understanding about hurts, habits, and hang-ups are people like me. People who are helpful, and despite the fact that we can, for the most part, muddle through our issues and appear somewhat functional in the world, we are really stuck in desperate and terrible things that Jesus wants to free us from. CR to me is the body of Christ, the church, where people come, are transparent with one another, expressing their faults, praying for one another, accepting, listening to, and supporting one another, and walking along with God and growing together. Before I started CR, I had begun my journey to more freedom in Jesus, but God was so generous to me. He knew the things I was facing would require me to be transparent about really difficult things with a group who could love and support me through it with his heart. So he wrapped my freedom inside a package that looked, on the face of it, like me helping at CR at Rancho. So how does someone who didn't really come to CR for help have a testimony about how CR helped them? If you're here and aren't sure about CR or don't know if it's for you, stick around long enough, and like me, you'll likely find out. From Zephaniah 3:17, the Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He will take great delight in you, and he will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. Thank you for letting me share.